Welcome to the Anaheim Calling Podcast, the very first episode of the 2019-2020 NHL season, Anaheim Ducks season. This is the first podcast officially of the year. We have recorded intermittently throughout the summer, but this podcast marks the beginning of another epic journey. This is going to be our third full season. Jake, I am excited that we are doing this that we've made it this far.
So we haven't been taken down yet. No one's forced us to stop.
We haven't been shut down yet, so we'll take that as either a good sign or we won't make anything of it. We'll just carry on. So today, folks, we are going to recap the Ducks offseason, as quiet as it may have been. We are going to look ahead towards the rookie tournament and maybe do a bit of a season preview, regular season preview. I don't know how much of that we'll get into, but so that's what those are going to be the main topics today. But before we jump into all of that, Jake, how was your off season? Are you feeling refreshed? Are you feeling ready to rock and roll? What are we at right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a good off season. I mean, taking some time, played some video games, surfed a little bit, did my own thing, took the time off and kind of made the most of it. But I mean, so for those of you that are watching this and are mainly only podcast listeners, Felix and I still did do Patreon episodes over the summer. We did 2 each month, and those were really fun to kind of keep the vibe going, the thought process going, because we did some good stuff there. If you want to hear more from us, just more so on the league as a whole, that was kind of what we did. We did some off-season previews. We did some reactions, some stuff for the league as a whole, not just the Ducks, and really kind of had some interesting opinions and takes, I think, as we went along from both of us.
There were some questionable takes on some of those episodes, but they were only available for our patrons. So
Patreon.com/ACPod.
Most of the world will just never know, which is kind of fine by me. Okay, so yes, and as for myself, off season didn't really feel like an off season because we were still working. But I actually just came back from a 7-day vacation, staying beachside in Newport Beach, California, which to me is the best way to take a vacation, if you ask me. Just sit on a beach.
A little staycation.
Go in the water, stay in the beach. I mean, if you want to travel, that's different than taking a vacation. I wouldn't call that a vacation. That's different. That's work. But anyway.
Depends on what you're doing.
All pleasantries aside, let's get right to the hockey. And for those who are longtime listeners, the notepad is back. So if you're watching on Twitch right now, you can see that I have my notepad out. So we are rocking and rolling here. So the Ducks had generally a quiet off season. This was an off season that I think was marked more so by its transitionary properties more so than what it actually did. Right. So to me, the biggest launching point for all this is the Corey Perry buyout, something that none of us really saw coming.
No.
Early in the summer, it broke that the Ducks were potentially exploring a trade or even a buyout with the Corey Perry contract, which as soon as the word buyout was uttered, you basically knew that his days in Anaheim were numbered because the trade market, given his contract at the time, would have been slim. But if a buyout was a possibility, it means that the Ducks were very intent on getting him out of town, which they did. They ended up buying him out, and now instead of having 2 years left at $8.625 million, the remaining cap hit, the cap savings it's going to be $2.625 this season, so $6 million in savings. Due to, I believe, a signing bonus next season, that cap hit actually goes up to $6.625, and then it's $2 million a year for 2 years after that. So it goes from 2 years at 8.6 to 4 years at, let's call it 2.6, with the exception of the second year at 6.6.
Yeah.
So there's really marginal cap savings. It did give the Ducks more flexibility this offseason, which they actually didn't really use.
Yeah.
But so really this is the end of an era. This is the turning of a page. Jake, what do you make of it?
As the leader of the hashtag Perry is still good movement, obviously this hit me a little bit hard, but I mean,
shot across the bow.
So, I mean, you got to look at it two ways. I mean, as a fan, you're obviously going to have your emotional impact on it, and you're going to look at it emotionally. And I think from that perspective, it's sad because, I mean, Perry played his whole career here, was drafted by the Ducks, came up with the Ducks, won a cup with the Ducks, won a Hart Trophy with the Ducks. You look at a lot of things, his number is going to go up in the rafters. And so it really kind of sucks that he goes out this way, that this is the way that it ended. But, I mean, you look at it, try to look at it from a rational perspective. It's hard to rationalize with this because, personally, I don't think it's the best idea in the world simply because of the $6.625 million cap hit next year. And so it's almost, in my opinion, it would have been better just to eat the rest of the contract, even if you didn't think he was performing. But I think if you're trying to rationalize why this deal happened, it's not going to be a cap perspective thing. It's going to be a roster perspective thing, and that they wanted to clear up roster spots for guys to come in and take over. So because you have on the right-hand side, you have Ondrej Kase, you have Jakob Silfverberg, you have Troy Terry, you have Daniel Sprong. And so they wanted to kind of get out someone who would have been taking up one of those roster spots to have those kids come in. Now, having said that, those kids have big shoes to fill. They are taking over for a franchise legend at this point. That is a number that's going to go up in the rafters. And so there are high expectations, I think, on that crop of right wingers to be able to, yes, I know Perry hasn't produced like he has in the past this past year, but there's going to be high expectations to fill that role because that is essentially what they have to do. They have to come in and essentially you've lost one of the greatest goal scorers in the history of the franchise, and now you're asking those four guys to take over that.
Right. Well, so like you said, the logical basis for all of this is we'll call it dubious at best. I mean, there isn't really much of a rational, or sorry, there's not as much of a logical basis in that. Really the only logical thing that it does is it creates a bit more space for younger players to come in. It, like you said, it clears up that logjam along the wings because the Ducks have a ton of wingers on both the left and the right side, and where the Ducks are at as a franchise right now in kind of a transition, retool, rebuild, whatever you want to call it, to me, it's more important to find out what you have in a Daniel Sprong, what you have in a Troy Terry, and even an Ondrej Kase than what you do in a Corey Perry. So but that's not quite as logical. That's just more of a philosophical reason why they did it. Because cap-wise, like you said, the savings aren't really there. So to me, what this really came down to is this was the passing of the torch. This was the turning of the page. This was the end of an era. And I will say it, you don't have to agree. I think that although the logical basis isn't quite as sound as you would like it to be, I think this was the right move because I think that the Ducks needed to do something maybe a little dramatic to signify, hey, we are moving into a new era of Ducks hockey. We are moving into a new look. And Corey Perry, he's had maybe behind the scenes his quarrels with management in the past, was just never going to be a part of that. And I think that from all of those perspectives, it just made sense for this to happen. And I'm not going to say I support it because it's not as if this is support or don't support, but I just think that this is a defensible move at the end of the day.
I think that you can make a defense of it. I don't think it's the correct move. I mean,
which is fine. You don't have to agree with it.
Yep.
Which is fine. There are definitely reasons to object to it, but I think that if you look at the big picture for this franchise, there are reasons to at least understand it. Now, speaking of which, transitioning over, part of that transition this summer was the hiring of, drumroll, Dallas Eakins as the next head coach of the Anaheim Ducks, something that Jake
very, very happy about.
Had been predicting for a long time.
Very, very happy about.
And finally happened. There was a drawn-out hiring process. There were a lot of different candidates that were interviewed. We don't even have to get into the list because it does not matter anymore. Dallas Eakins is the man in Anaheim.
Yep.
And Jake, I'm going to let you have the floor here because this is your moment. This is your moment to gloat.
This is my guy. I'm hitching myself to his wagon. I got to learn. Basically, if he fails, that's not going to look great on me, I guess. But whatever. The reason why I'm excited for Dallas Eakins is there's a lot of things behind it. But basically, he's a guy that has essentially coached a lot of the kids on this team. You look at, I'm just running through the list right now, but you have Ondrej Kase, Nick Ritchie, Troy Terry. You also have Sam Steele, Max Jones, Max Comtois. I believe no, Josh Manson wouldn't have been coached by him. But you basically have a lot, maybe
Jacob Larson.
You're probably going to have about half the roster, Korbinian and Holzer also, that had been coached by him. John Gibson also played a little bit for the Goals, so he was coached by Dallas Eakins also. And so there's a familiarity there, which I think that shouldn't be the only reason why you hire a coach, because I think that is just, right. If you have two guys that are equal footing, I think that gives him a leg up, simply because that means it's easier for him to come in and basically take over the reins, because everyone kind of knows his system, knows what he's going to be doing. But I think the other aspects that I like of him is, first off, I think that idea that the Edmonton experience with him was his fault is just straight up not true. We've seen over the past however many years that Edmonton is just a train wreck, and they're starting to try to get out of that with Ken Holland being their GM. They're making a bit more savvy moves, kind of making some smarter moves. But you look at Edmonton, and it almost seems like there was more there. And so you look at what they did, though, his first year. He fully admitted that he made some mistakes. He came in and didn't try. He basically tried to make it his way or the highway instead of trying to adapt to his players. And then basically his second year started to make those changes, and if you look at their underlying numbers, they were actually pretty decent, and he started to kind of get them out of the funk. The issue was they just had awful goaltending that year, and I believe Ben Scrivens was the goalie that year, and they just couldn't get a save, and so they lost a bunch of games, and essentially Dallas Eakins had to fall on the sword because of it, and it kind of wasn't exactly a fair shake in that aspect, and so he goes to San Diego, basically does a really great job there, turns a team that was the AHL team for a contending Ducks team for the entire period, and turned them into a team that was pretty good every single year, even though they not always had the best talent because of the Ducks always having to pick late. And so this is a guy that kind of is a more forward-thinking type of coach. He's a guy that is very into nutrition. He's a guy that is very much a player's coach that is more for the new NHL player. He cares about every player. He tries to get to know them on a personal level, tries to understand what makes them tick. And I think that's what you need. And that's what you need with the modern day player, with especially a team in the Ducks that are going to be transitioning to a youth movement with guys like Troy Terry, with guys like Sam Steele, with guys like Max Jones. And with these guys coming in, you need to have a guy that understands how to coach them. And with Randy Carlyle, you didn't have that. You had a more old school guy who was, by all reports, more his way or the highway, that kind of there wasn't any other way to go. Whereas Dallas Eakins coaches every guy differently. He understands, and this was something that was long reported, I believe it was in one of the Athletic articles, that he understood that he couldn't coach Sam Carrick the same way that he could coach Troy Terry. Some guys can be yelled at, and that's a way to get them motivated. Some guys, that's going to break them down and not help them move forward and get better. And that's something where you understand that every single player is different because, I mean, as we all learn as we get older, every person's different and they react to different situations differently. And I think that is a very important thing that Dallas Eakins has. And now that won't necessarily mean that just because of that he's going to be a good NHL coach, but I think that is a good first step for him. And so I'm excited to see what he can do with this Ducks team. I'm excited to see what he does systematically with this team. I'm excited to just see a more forward-thinking coach behind the bench, to be honest, and somebody that's not afraid to try stuff, because at the end of the day, the most frustrating thing with Randy Carlyle was, for all the chatter that there was about him changing, about him going to a faster style, about all this stuff, when you watch the team over the last 3 years, the system was basically the same. There was no change. And there was a lack of adaptability in that coaching staff. And I'm hopeful that with Dallas Eakins, there is a coaching staff that can make adjustments, make changes based upon the personnel. And that is something I'm very excited. And so even if they are failing, I'm excited, as in if the team is not doing well, I'm excited to see what changes can be made to try to get them out of that funk. Because I think that is a very big strength of Dallas Eakins.
Right, exactly. I mean, if we're just looking ahead and seeing what can Dallas Eakins instantly change, instantly improve, the thing that killed the Ducks last year, and I think killed them in the last 3 years, and I know I might get some pushback on that terminology, but something that held them back was just the fact that their defensive zone coverage was so bad, that they were just so porous in the offensive zone, and it made guys it got Brandon Montour out of town.
Yeah.
And he actually put up some really good numbers next to Rasmus Dahlin over in Buffalo after that trade. So maybe it wasn't Brandon Montour, maybe it was just the system. So I think that he can immediately change that, and I think that will immediately make them a better team. Another thing that I will be looking forward to, of course, me, is the power play. I think that the power play has been a huge drawback for this team in the last couple of seasons, and I liked what I saw from some of their power play setups down in San Diego. And so we'll see. There are just immediate things that I think tangibly he can do to improve this team. Now, another thing that I do want to mention, which I find frustrating in the way that Dallas Eakins has been covered, is that everyone loves Todd Nelson, who, for those who don't know, has also been a really good AHL coach, won a Calder Cup, I believe, in Grand Rapids, and has just had a very good pro hockey coaching career. He also failed in Edmonton. He also did not last very long there. And for whatever reason, that has not tainted his career the same way that it has Dallas Eakins. And everyone agrees that Todd Nelson is a great coach. Todd Nelson actually interviewed for the job that Dallas Eakins now holds. So can we just all agree to not talk about the Edmonton days anymore? Because it happened a long time ago.
That's not going to happen.
It's not relevant.
The first sign of failure from Dallas Eakins, the first thing that's going to be brought up is, oh, well, we saw this in Edmonton. We're seeing it now.
We may just have to make it our job to push back on that, because I just think that it's just not apples to apples. The game, the league has changed. True. It's not the same roster. And also, I think that we should try to stay away from, in covering Dallas Eakins, trying to compare it to San Diego, because coaching an AHL team and coaching an NHL team is just, it couldn't be any more different. The roster stability angle, just the kind of motivations for the players are different. So there's a whole lot there that's going to be different.
It's almost as if we need to just isolate this stint as a head coach and not utilize any other previous experience when analyzing it. And I think that's the way that you have to go with any coach coming into a situation, unless you have previous examples with that same roster, which is what we have with Randy Carlyle.
It's almost as if we should just judge him at face value and give him a fair chance.
Maybe.
Oh my goodness. What's funny, though? The last thing I'll say here, what's funny is that when we talked about familiarity, the Ducks actually did make a familiarity hire last time around with Randy Carlyle for a second time, and you see how that worked out. But on that note, we are going to go into our first break of the podcast here. Coming up on the next side of the break, we are going to talk about some of the offseason signings. So we'll be right back. Okay, back from the first break. So far we've covered the Corey Perry buyout and the Dallas Eakins hiring, which to me is a nice little kind of way of ordering it up. Not taking credit here or anything, but we moved on from the past. We've looked ahead to the future. Now let's look at what some of the things that the Ducks did this offseason. Yeah. They didn't do a whole lot, and I think that that's kind of what we all expected. Some of us, some fans, maybe were hoping for a larger trade. We're hoping for a bigger, splashier move. But like you and I have talked about many times, there wasn't really a big move to be made, even with the added cap space from the Corey Perry buyout.
Yeah, and it's one of those where, based upon roster spots, there just wasn't the ability. And it's one of those where, from a free agent signing perspective, I mean, we talked about, I think, going into free agent frenzy and at the draft, that I didn't expect the Ducks to really be big movers in free agency because of how the roster was set up. Now, having said that, I think the only thing I can see the Ducks doing is a trade. And I think there are some names out there that could potentially be players that the Ducks may look at targeting if they are looking to accelerate their retool/rebuild. But it's I think a trade is the only way that it would make sense, because you have to have a player go out for a player to come in.
Right, exactly. And if you look at what they did, like we mentioned, the roster spots weren't really there. I think that a lot of people have agreed that the Ducks had a really good draft, that they selected Trevor Zegras 9th overall, something that we all advocated for. Well, we all advocated that. You definitely advocated
Yes,
for.
I was all for it.
I of course did not have an opinion on it, but Zegras, a really high level, high skill playmaking center. We got a taste of him a little bit watching him play.
Sidetracking slightly, does your Montreal Canadiens, does their draft list coming out with Trevor Zegras being third on their draft board, does that change your opinion at all?
No, it doesn't really, because I think that we all knew. So for those who didn't follow the 2019 NHL draft that closely, everyone kind of agreed that after the first two picks, it was the wild, wild west. And so depending on the team, depending on their needs, that third overall guy in your rankings could be anyone. We saw the Chicago Blackhawks select Kirby Dach, which nobody expected, and that really just set off the whole draft order into a completely different direction. So, for example, had the Canadiens had the third pick, I guess they would have selected Trevor Zegras, which makes sense. The Canadiens need a playmaking, dynamic offensive center. And so there was a really kind of big group of players after number two, and you could have ordered them however you want. But to your point, to your question, it speaks to the talent level that Zegras possesses. And we got to see him a little bit at the development camp back in July, I believe. And, didn't get to see a whole lot of him, so I don't want to kind of take away a whole lot from that. We're not going to see him at the rookie faceoff due to the college eligibility rules. But he's a guy who, by all accounts, is going to be a high-end, high-level playmaking skilled center, which is exactly what this team needs. And so what do you make of that pick a bit?
I am in love with the pick. I mean, there's really no other way to put it, because I think what the Ducks needed was high skill, and at the end of the day, there are a couple other center, and they need a center. And
it's a high upside. It's a high upside pick, but it's not one of those where it's just it's a high ceiling, and this might crash and burn. He seems to have a pretty set floor as well. There's a lot of good accounts on just kind of his character and all of that, and so seems like a guy who could potentially be a number one center for this franchise.
Yeah,
someday.
and I think the thing is, there are a bunch of other centers that went above him, like in Alex Turcotte, and Kirby Dach is another one, Dylan Cousins. And I think the thing is, a lot of those guys, they're going to be great NHLers, but they're high floor guys. Yes, exactly. And so they're much safer picks, and I think that's why they went where they went. And I think when you look at Trevor Zegras, you look at a guy that his floor is definitely not as high as those guys. So when we say floor, it means basically the lower end of his projection. Essentially, if all things don't go right, where he's going to end up as an NHL.
He doesn't really have a spot on an NHL team quite as much as if a Dylan Cousins. Dylan Cousins will still be 6'4" no matter what.
Yeah, and
teams will give him a chance until the end of time.
Yeah, and whereas Trevor Zegras, though, if all things go correctly, he could be the best player out of those centers. And I think that's what I like from this, because it is taking a bit of risk. And I think for those of you that have listened to us for a while, you'll remember last summer during the draft, we were a little bit low on picking Isac Lundestrom because it just wasn't
safe pick.
It was a very safe pick. And this is the exact opposite of that. And I love it.
Exactly. And so Isac Lundestrom, I believe, was selected 27th overall. Don't quote me on that. Let's see here. Jeez, I'm having to pull up stats. Hate having to do this. But yes, he was selected 23rd overall last summer. And so the Ducks actually had 2 first-round picks this draft, and they selected with the 29th overall pick. This was from the trade, I believe, with St. Louis. I've lost track of that trade so many different times.
It was the Buffalo trade.
It was the Buffalo trade. This is correct. So this was the trade that brought them a first round pick along with Brandon Gooley. They selected Brayden Tracey, so there's, just so people kind of understand when it comes to draft circles, there are traditional scouts, guys who have been going to cold rinks in Siberia for decades. And there's this kind of newer wave of scouts that are a bit more analytically driven. And Brayden Tracey is a guy that is interesting because a lot of the analytically driven scouts love him as a potential, high upside guy. But there were also some old school scouts who liked him as well.
Yeah.
And so what I liked about that pick at 29th overall is that that's more of a home run swing. which to me, if you're picking in the 20s, just forget even 29. If you're just after 20, heck, if you're after 5, just swing for the fences. And so I really like the way that the Ducks handled their round one. We're not going to go through all the other selections.
We've done that
because there's not enough time. But it is noteworthy to at least talk about their draft because there's not going to be much else to talk about in their offseason moves. So I give them a big thumbs up on their draft. I thought just on the first round overall, it was a success. Moving on, though, to some of the signings, and maybe the most shocking move of the offseason for the Anaheim Ducks, Michael Del Zotto was brought back on a one-year deal.
Stanley Cup champion Michael Del Zotto.
Stanley Cup, my apologies. My apologies.
Get it right.
Michael,
wait.
Who had a...
How is he only 29?
He's been in the league for a long time.
He's been in the league for a long time. He's only 2 years older than Cam Fowler. That's weird.
So here's the thing. The Ducks have a very bizarre group of defensemen right now. And part of the reason that they brought in a Michael Del Zotto, in my opinion, was just to bring in another right-handed shot. Now, he did not put up good shot attempt numbers next to Cam Fowler, who was his most common partner last season. However, was close to break even in expected goals for, meaning that when those two were out there, they weren't necessarily bleeding high-quality looks against, but they weren't really generating much either. So, hey, if he can tread water next to Cam Fowler, that's no small feat. So I'm going to say that at the price that they brought him back at, which is well below $1 million, at $750K, it's a good depth signing.
Yeah. You can always
You can always
put him on.
Sorry, go ahead.
You can always put him on waivers and send him down.
Or
if someone claims him, it's really not that big of a deal.
He'll go through waivers. Another move that was made to kind of shore up that blue line depth. And sorry, I totally misspoke there. Michael Del Zotto is a left-handed shot, so my apologies there. Korbinian Holzer was also brought back on a one-year deal. I think he's the glue guy. I'm starting to think he's the glue guy in that locker room because he just keeps getting brought back. Has barely played for the Ducks in recent years, and yet the team just seems to love him. And he does seem to be a funny guy, kind of affable guy off the ice. And so he got brought back 1 year, $850K. Again, just to find seventh or eighth defenseman to have. But the signing of the summer, the one that we were totally blown away by, the signing of the summer.
Where are you going with this?
Jani Hakanpaa.
That's where you're going.
Brought in from the Finnish league. And he's a guy who we will see how this will go. But put up decent numbers playing in the SM Liga, and he will have an opportunity to basically claim that sixth spot as a right-handed D on the third pairing. So the Ducks basically just brought in a bunch of bodies, and they're going to see how it plays out on the blue line.
Something that's popped into my head with Hakanpaa.
Tell me. I really want to know where this goes.
And I want to get your take on this because this is something that kind of might kind of make it more clear why they brought back both Holzer and Del Zotto while signing Hakanpaa.
Out clause.
Yes. If you recall, well, was that last season or 2 seasons ago? Anton Rodin.
Yep.
And played a game.
I think that was last year, actually.
I think that was 2 years ago.
It feels like a lifetime ago.
It does.
Things were different then.
Regardless, Anton Rodin was with the Ducks, played a game or two, then wasn't going to play, so he had an out clause that he could go back to Sweden. Was that right? Sweden? So I think this... Nothing's been reported, so don't take this as me saying this is actually what it is.
There's been very little reporting on this move.
Yeah, so
it's actually been eerie.
It would not shock me though if there is something in his deal that allows for him to leave the Ducks. Or I mean, there may not even need to be something in the deal. It could just be a mutual termination of the contract, and it would allow Hakanpaa to go back to Finland.
I believe any NHL standard contract can be mutually terminated.
It can.
So I don't even think you need an out clause necessarily. But that's neither here nor there. So with Hakanpaa, just as a little more background, put up 23 points in 52 games for Kärpät in Liga last season. And Liga is a pretty good, it's not as good as the SHL. It's not as good as the KHL, but it's not a bad league. It's a good development league. So we'll see. Hakanpaa is definitely more of a veteran. I mean, he's 27, was a 4th-round pick back in 2010 for the Blues. So we'll just see how it works out. I like this idea, though, of, because the Ducks do have, I think, a pretty heavy scouting presence in Europe. And I think that I like the idea of just kind of taking a gamble on a guy and seeing if it works out. There's really no harm in doing that. No harm, no foul.
Yeah, Rogin was last summer. July 1st, 2018.
I told you.
I don't even believe I'm looking at. I don't actually think he ended up playing a game with the Ducks, but he failed to make the squad.
Did not.
He failed to make the squad.
He played in the preseason and did nothing.
Yeah, and
I distinctly remember breaking down his game.
And he had no intention of playing the AHL. So basically, right when he found out he didn't make the team out of camp, he was put on unconditional waivers and mutual termination of the contract.
Yeah, no, he was like, I'll just go back to Sweden with my free healthcare and just live life unhinged. Okay, now next up on our really just breathtaking list of offseason moves for the Ducks here, Anthony Stolarz brought in as the kind of third string goalie, on a 2-year deal, $750K a year. He's only 25, but to me, this is just my own personal view of this. I think that this is kind of a bridge or just kind of a fail-safe while the Ducks develop guys like Olli Eriksson, Lukas Dostal, see where they go. And from there, we'll see what ends up happening. But Stolarz, just for a little context, last season with the Philadelphia Flyers and the Edmonton Oilers had a negative GSAX. So that's goals saved above expected, meaning that based on the quality of the shots that he faced, he actually he didn't stop as many as you would expect. He was below that threshold. So I don't know what to make of it. He's a younger goalie. Maybe he'll thrive in a newer system. We probably won't see him in Anaheim unless there's an injury, which, could always happen. Knock on wood. You don't want to see anyone get injured. But I think that's just more of a depth move to kind of give the goalie prospect some time to develop. What do you make of it?
I mean, it's a depth signing.
Yeah,
that's really all it is. It's a depth signing, and it's getting someone in Anthony Stolarz who can basically come in if Ryan Miller does end up getting hurt like last year, and it gives him a little bit more cover.
It's not a great sign for Kevin Boyle, though, who has 1 year left on his deal and is a UFA next summer. Unless Kevin Boyle just lights it up in the AHL next year, he probably won't be back. So anyway, That's for those who are monitoring that situation. And then lastly, the last move that I have, and Jake, you can jump in after this and tell me if I forgot something. Nicolas Deslauriers, former Montreal Canadien, was acquired from Montreal for a 4th-round pick, for an actual draft pick. They brought in maybe one of the worst 4th-liners in the NHL. I don't want to say I have a personal bias against him, but as an unabashed fan of the Canadiens, I had to watch Nicolas Deslauriers basically get shelled every time he was out on the ice as a 4th liner and lost the trust of Claude Julien throughout the season. So to give up an actual asset, even if it's just a 4th-round pick, is not really something that I totally understood. He's only making $950K. He's probably more of a glue kind of locker room guy. Maybe there's something there, but I am not really high on that move at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it on the podcast, and I was very much against this trade. It was bad. Very, very bad.
It's just perplexing, to say the least. Okay, so that's pretty much going to do it for off-season moves. Did you want to kind of, I don't know, what do you make of it as a whole of this offseason?
It's what was expected. I mean...
Was it, though? I think some people were expecting different things.
I mean, from what you and I understood, basically...
explain to people why the big trade didn't happen. Why?
Well, so...
because some people, I think, were legitimately expecting, after such a downtrodden year, for heads to roll. And that's not really what happened at all outside of Randy Carlyle, but that was in season. And I guess Corey Perry was also sacrificed.
I mean, so I'm going to kind of take a step back on that because I think a trade could still happen. I think a big trade still could be in the works, not necessarily will happen, but who knows, maybe, for instance, a name that's kind of been thrown around a fair amount lately is Patrik Laine. And I think the main reason why the Ducks have been quiet is you look at kind of the moves that have happened around the league. There haven't really been that many trades for guys that would be in the contending window of the Ducks, because what you have to look at with the Ducks is when they are going to be contending. And so this is going to be a term I'm probably going to be talking about this a lot over this next year, a lot over the next couple of years, is contending windows, because that's what you need to be looking at here. You don't want to basically go all in when your team isn't ready yet, because you might basically screw up your contending window, and you want to get players that will align with the majority of your team so that when those guys are in their prime, all of them will be ready to go and going for it. So, for instance, the Ducks' contending window is probably going to be 3 to 4 years from now. When Troy Terry, when Sam Steele, when Max Jones, when all of these guys, when Zegras is on the team, when all these guys are kind of in their prime and ready to go, that's probably the contending window for this Ducks team. So
if those guys pan out, they
correct,
also have
correct.
to pan
that
out.
Is correct.
That's something that needs to happen first.
True.
Yeah.
That is something that definitely needs to be stated on this. But with this Ducks team, you look at all the guys that are available in free agency. Almost all of them are 27, 28 years old at least, or in their 30s. So you want to bring guys in that will align with your contending window. Those guys won't. By the time that the Ducks are contending, those guys will be, if they were 28, they'll be in their early 30s. If they are in their 30s, they'll even be in their later 30s. So it's really just kind of not a great idea to bring in guys from unrestricted free agency. And then you look at trades, there's not really any trades going around for guys in those contending windows. Now, they could still happen because, I mean, we talked about this on our latest Patreon show. So if you want to hear us go more in depth on, for instance, a Patrick Laine trade, go check out that. But there's a whole lot of RFAs that are still unsigned, and I think maybe 1 or 2 are going to get moved. And so I think if you can get one of them, if you can get a Patrick Laine or a Kyle Connor or something like that, I think that instantly makes this rebuild and retool go faster, because those are guys. I mean, one thing a lot of people forget with Patrick Laine, he's only 21. He's the same age as Troy Terry, same age as Sam Steele, same age as all of them. Why are you shaking your head?
No, because I'm agreeing. I mean, he's only 21, and I mean, it seems like the entire Canadian media has written him off already because he had a 30-goal season instead of a 50-goal season.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's insane.
And so we have all this hype around Troy Terry and Max Jones and Sam Steele, but they're all 21 and they haven't had a 30-goal season. And
right,
so
exactly.
You bring in a guy like that, it's insane what that does for this retool. And that age and that contending window aligns perfectly with those guys. And just think about 10 years of Trevor Zegras and Patrick Laine playing together.
Ooh, you're gonna get some fans excited with that one, Jake. But yeah, so I mean, the last thing I'll say here before we jump into our second break of the show is that I think the Ducks are viewing their current window as a 2-year window, because there's 2 years left on Ryan Getzlaf's contract, and in 2 years you're gonna have Troy Terry and Daniel Sprong are RFAs next summer. And then Sam Steele, Isaac Lundestrom, Max Jones, and Maxime Comtois, all RFAs this summer that Getzlaf expires. So this next 2 years is going to determine a lot for the summer of 2021-22, which I believe is also going to be the summer of the expansion draft. So that's when we talk about windows for the Ducks right now. I think that they're in a 2-year kind of auditing window. Let's see what we have, and we'll go from there. On that note, we are going to jump into our second and final break of the show. We'll be right back. Okay, back from the second intermission. So we've talked about the offseason. We've talked about the moves that were made. We've talked about kind of looking ahead. We've talked about the draft. Now let's talk about what's to come, the actual hockey that we're about to see next weekend here in Irvine, California at the new Great Park. Actually, it's going to be, I think, 5 Point Arena.
5 Point Arena at Great Park Ice.
At Great Park Ice, yeah. I need to nail down that official terminology. But so we're going to get to see all of the Ducks hopefuls in a competitive setting playing against other teams' top prospects. And so just so everyone knows, that's going to be next Saturday and Sunday.
Yes, so, next Saturday, Sunday, and Tuesday. A week from this upcoming Tuesday.
Yeah, it's going to be, let's see here. It's going to be September 7th through 10th, which is, so Saturday the 7th, the Ducks are going to play at 5 p.m. against the Kings prospects, and then they're going to play on Sunday against San Jose's prospects, and then they're going to play again on Tuesday at 3 p.m. against Vegas. Tuesday might be a little tougher to make for some people, for the working folk, but definitely if the tickets are still available, it's only $10 a game, so definitely try to check that out. We will be on hand. Jake and I will be there to see. I mean, I think that this is a great way to kind of get to know the prospects a little bit better. It's you learn more from this than even inter-squad scrimmages, because the guys are going to be going a lot harder. There's going to be more of those competitive juices flowing. But, Jake, looking at the roster here of guys that are going to be there, first off, what sticks out to you in terms of guys who are not going to be there?
Well, I mean, first things first, you're not going to have Trevor Zegras there. Due to,
which is I think a letdown for some fans, but explain to them why that is.
So that's something that kind of, for those savvy fans that understand eligibility rules and NCAA, Zegras, basically there was no way he was going to be playing in it unless he wasn't going to end up going to college at BU. And so basically the issue is that school has started for a lot of colleges. Training camp has begun for all the college teams. And so essentially they would have to be missing classes, missing college practices and things like
missing
that.
class. Oh, yeah. Yes, because that's really...
No, but
from
an NCAA perspective,
yes,
that is them basically not being an amateur athlete, a student athlete anymore. It's them going and getting paid. I mean, for the guys that are going to college, that are going to the rookie camp or the prospect camp, development camp, whatever they call it in the middle of summer, they have to pay their own way. Because if the Ducks or whatever NHL team they're on pays for them to fly out and pays for their hotel, they are not considered amateurs anymore. That is the team paying for them. And so it's basically the NCAA having NCAA rules, which are very frustrating and annoying. But this one I kind of get, simply because they have to be at school. So it's fine. So Trevor Zegras, Jackson Lacombe, and Blake McLaughlin will not be there. But guys that will be there, and this is kind of the interesting thing, because I did not expect this many players from the Ducks prospect system to be there, because it's technically called a rookie camp. And there are some guys on this team that I don't think they're considered rookies in the NHL anymore.
Yeah, maybe.
You have guys like Troy Terry. You have guys like Sam Steele. You have guys like Max Jones. You have guys like Jacob Larson there. These are guys that have played significant minutes in the NHL. And
Jacob Larson being there is odd, because I feel like he's at these camps every year.
This is probably his last one.
Well, here's my thing on this. I feel like, first off, they have to put a team together.
Yeah,
so
true.
You just need bodies. But secondly, maybe part of it is the fact that it is, local. It is going to be in front of the hometown fans. And so maybe putting a team together that's a little more stacked is just good for the fans. I don't know. But I think it's good. I mean, I think that the entire goal for the organization right now is that they want to bring this crop of players together and kind of develop them as a unit, and hopefully, kind of just have that chemistry already firing by the time that, the season rolls around. This could be a Dallas Eakins call, for all we know.
Well, it also could be simply because a lot of the guys that were drafted over the last year were all NCAA players.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, this could just be simply a logistical issue.
It could be a numbers thing.
There's just we can't fill enough shoes, so we're just gonna have to bring you guys back and play.
Yeah.
But it should be a lot of fun. I mean, definitely, if you're a hockey fan, and even if you're not a Ducks fan, even if you're just a hockey fan, it's good action. I've been watching these tournaments for 2 years on grainy streams online, so I'm excited to actually be in person and be able to see it. But so let's do this. Let's play this little game, and then maybe we will jump into some questions or start wrapping up. Give me 3 guys who you are going to be looking at in terms of just whether. So I want 3 names. 3 guys who can either be, that you're looking forward to really step up, that need a good camp, or that could really stand to benefit from this, or that you're just curious about. Just give me 3 names that you're going to be keying in on.
I think Brendan Gooley is one, simply because there was a lot of hype and excitement last year about him, because he had a couple of really good games for the Ducks and then got hurt and never really was able to make his way back onto the team due to injuries. He played 6 games for the Ducks last year and looked very good in those games. So I'm interested to see him. I think another one is going to be Brayden Tracey, and it's funny, with all the hype surrounding Trevor Zegras, and rightfully so, because he's the first top 10 pick that the Ducks have had in a very, very long time. It's kind of forgotten that Brayden Tracey was a first-round pick also. I feel like in other years, Brayden Tracey would be the only first-round pick that the Ducks had, because for a long time the Ducks were in the mid to late 20s with their first-round picks. And so it's funny because think about the hype around if, for instance, the Max Jones draft, seeing Max Jones and Sam Steele at this game. There probably would have been a fair amount of hype, and I think there was when those guys were playing because people wanted to see what they could do, what they were doing. And it's almost like Brayden Tracey has kind of become a bit of a forgotten aspect of it because of Trevor Zegras and the hype surrounding him.
Yeah, think about how much time we spent talking about Lundestrom last summer because he was the only first-round pick.
Exactly. And so
I would argue, and having not watched him quite as much, but I think Tracey might already have more offensive upside than Lundestrom.
And then, I mean, I got to be on brand. Troy Terry.
Well, so what are you looking for from Troy Terry? Because I feel like he doesn't have a whole lot to prove here.
So this is an interesting...
But I feel like he has a little bit... I think he has a little bit to lose, and I don't want him... I don't want him, for those who follow boxing, I don't want to be Triple G here and make this a big drama show. But, if he doesn't dominate this, it's going to be a little odd. I'll just say it'll be odd.
Yeah. Honey Badger in our Twitch chat said he's going to be looking for 5 holes. So
yes.
My opinion on it is I think I want to see Troy Terry dominate, to be honest. And I know that that's a high bar, but I mean, this is a guy that is very highly touted as I have definitely done over the last year or two. He's a guy that probably should be on the Ducks roster, going into next year. And so he's going to be playing against other guys that are, quite frankly, not to his level. The guys that he's going to be playing against are going to be guys that will probably be going back to junior, guys that will probably be in the AHL, probably not in the NHL. Majority of the guys he's going to be playing against are not. And having said that, he should be able to dominate this tournament. And now, I should also back that up a little bit. This is a 3-game sample size.
Yeah, so, I mean, like we can only take away so much from any of this.
Yes. And so,
but they are competitive games.
They are competitive games. So I think that I want to see him dominate. I think if he doesn't, I want to see what he does because the points may not come. Because as we've talked about,
I think it's more of just the physical attributes for him. Does he look stronger?
Yes,
does he look faster? Is he winning battles? Things like that.
Yeah.
By the way, so just as a recap of it, just kind of a nutty stat. Troy Terry had 41 points in 41 AHL games last year. 16 goals and 25 assists in 41 AHL games.
He was so good in the AHL.
He was very good. For a 5th-round pick, this is already looking pretty good. If Troy Terry becomes a solid top 9 player in the NHL, top 9 forward, this is already a huge win as a 140th overall pick in 2015. Okay, so just to recap your list, you've got Brendan Gooley, you've got Brayden Tracey, and you've got Troy Terry.
Correct.
I'm going to give you my list.
Go for it.
And some of these are going to surprise some people. Some of these are going to be just totally on brand. First and foremost, another forgotten name because, that's just kind of what happens when you're not the top pick in that draft. But Benoit Olivier Groulx, who played for Halifax last season in the QMJHL, put up 80 points in 65 games, and that's as a 2000 birth year. So I'm just curious to see, I wasn't really blown away by him last camp. I thought that he had some good physical attributes. He's clearly kind of a rangier guy at 6'2". He's got some speed, but I want to see more polish in his game. So look for Bo Groulx, as they call him, Bo. I'm going to be looking at Groulx quite a bit because I think, look, second round pick at 54th overall. You're almost considered a first rounder at this point in the way the draft works nowadays. The first 2 rounds are, you can get some really solid talent. And if Groulx can become anything for the Ducks, that's a huge win. And he's playing over in a really good program over in Halifax.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how he will do. Another guy again, I'm going to stay on brand here, that I want to see really take that next step, because I think he has the potential to be, especially as an undrafted guy, as a potential to be a solid professional hockey player. Simon Benoit, a guy who kind of came out of nowhere last year, again, undrafted. I believe he was on a tryout, or he was an undrafted free agent. And basically
you were all over him.
And I saw him play in camp, and I thought, this guy looks pretty good. He ended up being a solid contributor for the Gulls. So I'm curious to see if he can keep his kind of momentum going. He should be able to do that. I'm not, I like you. I'm curious to see Tracey, but just for the sake of giving a different name, this is an obvious one. But actually, I'll give a split one for my last one. Max Comtois, I'm expecting him to dominate. I think he will, but let's see it. This is a physically imposing player, listed at 6'2", 207 with soft hands, left winger. I'm really curious to see how he'll do against, like you said, inferior competition. And then additionally, I want to see how Isaac Lundestrom has progressed, because, we saw flashes from him last season in 15 NHL games. And so I'm curious to see what he will look like against these guys. So for those who are going to be attending, for those who are going to be listening to our breakdown afterwards, there's going to be a whole lot to talk about, a whole lot to break down.
Yeah. Quick question for you, and I'm curious what your take is on this. Who's going to be behind the bench? Dallas Eakins or Kevin Dineen?
Oh boy, great question. Maybe they'll both be. So that's another thing we should mention that I don't think we touched on, is that the Ducks, or I guess the Gulls, did hire Kevin Dineen as the replacement for Dallas Eakins down in San Diego. So, and Kevin Dineen is a pretty good track record. It seems like, I don't have a whole lot to say on it, but seems like it's a solid hire.
Yeah.
Also, another thing, and sorry that we're going kind of off topic here, but I believe that the Anaheim Arena Group, so that's the company owned by the Samuelis that owns Honda Center, that owns the Ducks, everything, made the acquisition of the actual Gulls franchise and the Pechanga. I'm blanking on the name of the arena, but they basically, now the Ducks own outright everything about the Gulls. So there's going to be some more synergy there between the two teams, both at the AHL and NHL level.
Yep.
So on that note, do you want to jump into some questions?
Yeah, so
or what do we got here?
So if anyone has some questions, throw them in the chat. So here comes the spiel, starting off the new season right. For those of you that are watching to the recorded version of this, or listening to the audio version of this on whatever platform you listen to, we're now on Spotify also, for those of you out there. We do a live stream of this show each and every time at twitch.tv/acpod, and it's a way that you can watch and interact with us live. We have plenty of people in the Twitch chat right now, and it's really nice to see a lot of familiar names in there. But if you want to support the show, you can do it on there in a way that's completely free to you, and it helps us out a pretty fair amount. And if you have Amazon Prime, that is how you can do it for free, because you get one free Twitch Prime sub each and every month. You do have to hit that subscribe button every 30 days, but if you do that, it helps us out significantly. And with that, you get a special badge next to your name. You get special emotes in the chat. I will be updating those soon, so there's no more Jack Hughes stuff in there, because those are still there, people. So for those of you that have questions that are in our Twitch chat right now, start throwing them in. But I did see one, I believe it was earlier, from Ken Pafu, Tony, good friend of the show, that was asking, how do people get their AHL numbers? The scouts out there, how do they get their numbers?
Well, there's not a whole lot out there. A lot of people just go off of box scores. Sadly, the guy from Prospect Stats, the website that I used quite a bit last season to do analytics, some type of analytics for the AHL, that guy got hired by the Kings, and so we're gonna be even more starved for AHL stats. But most people just get box score stats. It's quite that simple.
Yeah. This isn't a real question, but I think it's something we can talk about briefly. There's been rumors about the Ducks' new third jersey.
Rumors? Are they still at the rumor stage? I feel like it's all. But
Piggy Seven Swat said, shouldn't the new thirds be announced any day now? They probably should, but there have been rumors that the new third jersey is basically just going to be going back to the old orange jersey from the last couple of years, and that's going to be the third jersey with a couple of retools for the Adidas one.
Yeah, so go to aesthetics.com. First off, support that blog, because it's honestly the best place to go for any any jersey news. But yes, the Ducks, by all reports, are going to go back to the third jersey that we saw a couple years ago. It's going to look a little different. The collar is going to look a little better. It's kind of more of a solid black. And so for fans of that jersey, rejoice because it's coming back.
I am one of those. One of my favorite Ducks jerseys.
Also, on the topic of jerseys, the Kings just unveiled a throwback.
Oh, they did? I missed it.
Yeah, the night they're going back to the Gretzky era retro, which is not a fan. Well, that's fine.
The black and
but
gray.
Anyway, okay. Next question. No, white and gray actually. White and gray.
Oh, they're going to the white ones. I don't believe we have that many more questions. I think there's a fair amount in the Twitch chat are just happy that we're back. So happy to have all of you back.
Yeah, seriously, guys, it's been far too long. I just threw up the Aesthetics link in the Twitch chat, so if you're curious about all the jersey news this summer, definitely hit that link because there's a lot of new jerseys coming this season.
Piggy 7 SWAT says, I wish they would stick with the stripes like the anniversary jerseys had. Now that I'm thinking about it, that would not be a bad look on the orange jersey. Just don't have the shoulder yoke. Just have those the angled lines like the original Mighty Ducks and do it orange. I kind of like that.
Honestly, you know where I stand on this, but I was totally fine with the anniversary jersey they had last year.
Nope.
I would have been totally fine bringing it back, but I understand why they're doing this. It's more, it's more consistent with the branding, and it's going to be a good look. I think that the Adidas silhouette, the Adidas jerseys are a lot more sleek than the Reebok jerseys were, and so I think it's going to be a good look. There's been quite a few new jerseys unveiled within the last week. The Carolina Hurricanes have a new away jersey, which is pretty lame if you ask me. I don't think it's a good.
I like it.
I just hate the Canes.
I don't mind it.
Canes
I don't
thing.
mind it.
Just, I think it's going to be a good looking jersey on the ice, but it looks like it was created in NHL. EA Sports NHL create a team. That's just what it looks like
Fair.
to me. I actually like the Oilers' third jersey. That's a controversial one that I know a lot of people don't agree with. But the Oilers' third jersey.
I know I saw this, but I can't think of what it looks like right now. Now I'm going to
I'm
going to aesthetics.com.
I just threw up in the Twitch.
Where do you think I'm going right now? Real quick, Chad asked us, Quack City, did we enjoy our breaks?
Yeah, we did. I mean, didn't really feel like a break because it's not as if we just, it's not as if we just turn off, our lives until the season starts back up. But yeah, I mean, it was good to kind of have more time to delve into other things and have a little time off. But you know what? I missed the pod.
Yeah,
I missed it. It's honestly part of my routine now, and so it's weird when your routine just kind of gets flipped on its head. But yeah, any more questions? Anything else you want to touch on here?
Enjoyed my break also. Started playing WoW Classic last week, which was
Jake and I were at the beach yesterday, Huntington Beach.
It was a good time.
There was a parking crisis that was resolved.
Crisis?
Huntington State Beach is a tough place to park. It's just a tough place to
park. On
Labor
Day when you arrive at 3 p.m.
Okay, let's not throw those details in there that immediately ruined my position here. But no, definitely. If you're listening live or if you're listening today, try to enjoy the rest of your Labor Day. It is your right to enjoy your Labor Day. You earned it, so definitely make the most of it. Have a great week, everyone. By the time you're listening, if you're going to be listening to this on your morning commute, have a great week back because you know what? We don't really have a whole lot of breaks until Thanksgiving here. We got a question from Piggy 7 SWAT, and this is something that I actually don't know the answer to, but I think it's interesting because I hadn't seen this, to be honest. But I guess they're mentioning Eric Stevens in his articles keeps saying Zegras is a 2 years and done in college. Do you see him as a one and done or two and done? I mean, I don't really have a strong opinion on this, but if Eric Stevens keeps saying two, maybe he knows something we don't. So I think it just all depends. It depends where the team is going, what the roster looks like, how he does in his first year. There's TBD is my answer to that. TBD.
Yeah, I mean, it really
too
depends
many moving parts.
It really depends. Yeah, and it depends on what happens with Adam Henrique. I mean, if he's moved, if he's not moved, there's a lot of moving parts. I could see him going 2 years if Adam Henrique is still here. And also, I mean, like you said, it depends on what he does in college. If he really impresses and looks like he's ready, I could see him coming out after a year. So I don't think it's something that's set in stone.
It's a fluid situation, so just keep monitoring it. Watch his stats over at what's the school? Is it Boston College?
BU.
That he's at?
BU.
BU.
Wow.
Wow. That's good. That's a.
Damn.
I don't know if we have any Terriers fan in here, but that's a bit of an offensive.
They're gonna come for you.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay, but on that note, we are gonna wrap up. It's good to be back. We are going to be back next weekend to break down the Rookie Faceoff tournament, which will be held at 5 Point Arena, Great Park Ice here in Irvine, California. It's going to be a lot of fun. So if you're going to attend, hit us up in our Discord chat. So if you're a Patreon supporter at the $1 tier, you get to jump into our Discord chat, which is for patrons only. So you can let us know that way that you're there. We can coordinate. We can meet up. Of course, if you want to be an even greater supporter, for $5, you get 2 bonus episodes a month. So if you were a supporter over the summer, you still got consistent content from us. And on those podcasts, we go a bit deeper into different topics. We go more league-wide. We do a lot of rankings. We do a lot of fun little kind of theoreticals. So highly recommend it. And at $5, you still get the Discord chat. So don't think that they're mutually exclusive. But hey, if you just want to have a way to interact with us, well, then on a consistent basis, let's say if there's breaking news, then the $1 tier it's a great spot to be in. Discord is a really good functional app. And of course, like Jake mentioned, twitch.tv/AC pod.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that all season long, we're going to be doing live broadcasts after each and every Ducks game. And for any time we do the pod, sometimes we may not be able to do that if we're doing interviews, things of that nature. But as far as the post-game shows go,
we've got a lot planned for this upcoming season.
As far as post-game shows go, we will definitely be broadcasting on Twitch. So if you're not a subscriber yet, hop on that train now, especially if you have Amazon Prime already. But of course, none of this is possible without our home base, AnaheimCalling.com. That's at Anaheim Calling on Twitter. Definitely check that out. If you're a Ducks fan, it's a great source of content, commentary, and just news. So definitely check it out. And also just support although it's part of a larger network, Fox Media, it's only run by people who make it happen on their own time. So support that, if nothing else. Just like Jake and I do with this podcast. Find us on Twitter. That's another great way to interact with us, disagree with us, yell at us, whatever the case may be, DM us. Jake is on Twitter at ReindeerGames91. I am on Twitter at Felix_card. That's going to be spelled in the description because no one ever knows how to spell my weird French name. That's fine.
There's no accent on Twitter. Folks, don't worry. There's no accent.
There's no accent on Twitter. Don't worry about it. Jake, anything else that I may have forgotten here?
Not that I can really think of. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, for those of you that would have missed it, that are watching this on Twitch or watching on YouTube or listening to the audio version now does have ads due to the fact that we are now a member of the SB Nation or Vox Media Podcast Network.
Yes. So look, if you're a longtime listener, don't be alarmed. The show is still going to be the same. Us being part of Vox Media now just kind of helps keep this thing going. But on that note, it's good to be back. We'll be back with another episode next weekend, and we will talk to you then. Thank you for tuning in. And for those who are listening on your commute or at work or wherever you are, have a great week. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.